Call to a meeting of the Finance Committee of the City of Cudahy this Tuesday, October 8th, 2019, at 5:31 PM. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the community and posted in appropriate places. Notice was also given to the media who requested, namely the Milwaukee Journal and SouthShoreNow.com. Roll call, Alderman Morales.
Here.
Alderman Johnson.
Here.
Alderwoman St. Marie Belko must be late. Citizen Member Carmela Lewis is absent. Citizen Member Elger.
Here.
And the chair is also here. Also in attendance is the mayor, some department heads, and director of office services, and Dennis Broderick. Old business, we have none. New business, presentation of the 2020 General Fund 101 budget revenues and expenses based on the state of Wisconsin transportation funding and other potential short-term borrow options as previously discussed at the Finance Committee. Let it shown Michelle St. Marie Belko is here.
Okay, last time you requested that I come before you and have a balanced budget. I apologize to the audience. We had put this together probably right up to the time we came to this meeting. We were still reviewing revenue numbers with the police department and our courts, our judge, to make sure that we had accurate numbers. In addition, we were just finalizing some expenses and double checking our numbers. So before you, I have a balanced budget of $13,774,281. This is less than a 1% increase over 2019. The reason for that is we're constrained by levy limits and our ability to generate revenues. I don't think next year will be any better. It'll probably be a worse budget. Until we get to 2022 and that TIF closes, we really have no tax levy room to bring in additional revenue. We think we've maxed out our revenues, scaled some back to actually more reasonable numbers. So, and we think that's a positive. We should forecast realistic revenues. There are some revenues that we're looking at that we're changing how we get our court forfeitures from trips to a state-run debt collection service. We're expecting a better return on collections on that, but we have no history to project out a revenue number. So again, the assumptions were, some of this is from last time, the 2% wage increase. State of Wisconsin increased our contribution, which means their prediction on how their funds are doing are probably lower than what they estimated, so they come to us for additional money. Our health insurance was, I would say, maintained at a 2.65, which I think if you ask other municipalities, they probably couldn't touch that number. 0% increase in dental, basically a $269,000 increase with wages and WRS. From the revenues, we tried to look at a 3-year average. On the revenues, property tax increased to $169,817. Our shared revenue increase went up $26,225 to $3,747,000. Our state highway aid had increased $18,387. We also were looking at fines and forfeitures. I think in the past years, I think this body looked at inspection fees and other things and have made them equitable with other municipalities. We're looking at a $5 increase in parking permits and a $5 increase in parking fines. And we're also looking at our court forfeitures to align with neighboring communities for more serious crimes like battery. Ours are on the low end, and a lot of other municipalities have tiers, first offense, second offense, and it increases. So we'll be making those recommendations, but it's difficult to project, how do you want to project your crime, and it's probably not a good projection. But we have those in there, and we used a conservative number. Other tools we used to balance the budget, we looked at the payroll system and realized employees were not properly allocated to the 110 Property Management Fund. That's a separate fund outside of the 101. We found that had a balance, and that really we had a we could allocate additional employees to that budget because they were doing the property inspections. 701 is the ambulance fund that was initially intended to fund capital for an ambulance. It does have a balance of about $196,000. It also funds a few of the firemen and part of the chief. We're looking maybe next year to purchase a new ambulance out of that fund. Short-term borrow, this is, I'll turn this over to Kelly, but I think she mentioned last time at the, we went to, I think that was at Ehlers, had a workshop, and we found that a good number of municipalities are using a short-term borrow technique to move, I don't want to say move out of their 101, but it you know, a lot of this stuff is if you look in our list, we have police vehicles, snow removal. It's better to borrow for that than to put that in your general fund. It just doesn't, it's a long-term capital fund. So we, you know, we are able to move $100,000 and borrow that as opposed to affect our general fund. We need these items that were listed, the DPW truck, the fitness testing equipment, the turnout gear. The fitness testing equipment is not a workout gym. It's the health department needs to do this to test the firemen and some of the tests that they need to go through. And also we want to, we think it's really important to upgrade the computer infrastructure, servers, switches, desktops. The investment in capital infrastructure above allows us to reduce the IT equipment replacement and maintenance budget in the 101. So we think by spending money, we'll save money in other areas. Contingency, I left $21,000 in there. The mayor and Kelly's position, I'm able to allocate some monies to the 105 fund, which is the CDA, since I now do CDA work. I left that money in the 101 fund, but if need be, we can transfer that money to the 105. We gotta do that. We'll see how much time I spend on economic development. We had money set aside to pay out employee retirements. If you know they've got lump sums that they pay for their vacations. We budget $90,000. We hope that we have, you know, 5 or 6, and then we'd have money left for this body to move to another department if needed. We can delay hiring an IT resource if necessary, so empty positions you can defer if needed to kind of buy yourself some time and money in the budget. And we're also looking at savings in our telecom budget. I'm still working with the company Digicorp to do that assessment. So that would affect department budgets too if we can reduce their Time Warner costs to their facilities. Okay. So in the budget, I think last time we talked about options for the DPW. I recommend for the drop-off site, I recommend option 2, which is the special pickup that a lot of residents have been requesting. That's kind of a net neutral number. I was asked about the drop-off site. I just got information today. We are trying to put that together. I think Alderman Johnson, Alderman St. Marie Belko asked about, you know, what happens to the drop-off site going forward. I would say I think Alderman Johnson had a recommendation that it has to pay for itself. So I personally would like to refer that to the Board of Public Works. I think both those aldermen are on that. I think if it's not a pay as you go and it doesn't, you know, the expenses don't equal the revenues, then I don't, you know, we can't do it in the 101 budget unless it pays for itself. So I'm hoping that Alderman Michelle St. Marie Belko and Alderman Johnson would take that up in the Board of Public Works if they want to pursue that.
Can you clarify what option number 2 is again?
That's the drop-off site with the recyclables and the special pickup that allows you to have one pickup with advanced disposal, 7 cubic feet, which I believe is a big number. I was told 2 bagsters, if anyone knows what the waste management bagsters are. I think that's a good option.
And
I mean, I would probably use that in my golden ticket.
So then, what I'm reading here again in option 2 is that the drop-off to be open for all residents for yard waste and
Yes.
other recyclable material only.
Correct.
There would be no drop-off of refuse to anyone, and the drop-off hours would not change, so we'd be
Correct.
status quo on the hours.
I did throw money in the budget, 4,000 into DPW, and just in case we, I guess the Board of Public Works would consider opening, let's say, what is it, January, February, March, first Saturday of the month. I'm gonna leave that to you. But I don't know how much activity, but some of you have been on that, involved in that more than I have, so.
And then
closer to
again,
it.
what you're saying is that if there's an opportunity to do, at this time, you want it looked at committee level as far as to be able to do a paid for additional.
Yeah, I think it has to be a cost neutral, it cannot add any, we don't have any, if the revenues don't equal the expenses, you can't fit them into the 101. And that's the struggle we had with the entire budget, is trying to think of other ways to generate revenue, we don't have them. You can only charge so much for stuff, right? And then-
So Mayor, then, obviously, the dump has been a contentious issue. It actually changed before my time, probably 10 years ago, since the regulations. So you're comfortable then owning this recommendation that one pickup, the dump is limited to recyclables and that's it?
Yes, unless the Board of Public Works can come up with a cost-neutral way of, as Alderman Johnson said.
Or unless you
pay
have
for it.
another idea that we can take some other money out of the budget to
Yeah, I don't-
defer it somewhere. I mean, I guess at this point in time, unless somebody else has a good idea, this is a great, I guess a positive first step. Unfortunately, again, we haven't had a lot of opportunity at the committee level to discuss this. Even these options, I think it might have come a few months ago, but to see how things go. If we had even a refuge pickup even more than once a year, we probably would not need to have the refuge at the dump site. Only even once a year. I get it's a nice opportunity. I'm still a little concerned with that. But understanding at this point in time, unless we're gonna put something else on the chopping block, we don't really have another option. But definitely at the community level, I would like to keep investigating it to see what we can do for the future.
Yeah.
It's a good first step.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
I think we have to, and maybe Mary Jo can clarify this a little bit later. I think if we go with option 2, we are eliminating the refuse there. I don't think we can all of a sudden decide, 6 months from now, we're gonna go and do that. Because I think we're gonna have to sign a contract with Advance or whomever we go with.
I didn't say 6 months.
No, I'm just giving,
I said
you
next
said
budget
to see if we,
discuss it for next budget season, like I said, for the next year.
okay, for the next
I
year.
understand we do our budgets once a year, so again, the decision is made, but our contract is
But
not forever.
We're probably signing a
So-
contract that's more than 1 year.
Well, I don't know
So-
that, so I guess we can be,
What-
had some light shed on that for us, so we are aware. And again, I'm not aware that even at committee level, as far as what that contract, how long it is, so I'm not gonna speak to it, and I guess unless you know for sure.
I don't, so I'm taking it option 2 hasn't been vetted yet through the Board of Public Works, correct?
I believe this was, and I'd have to be reminded if it was 2 months ago that,
This just came from the last meeting when.
there was some
Yeah.
preliminary, but it wasn't
We were
this
asked to
exact
come up with it,
information.
So it wasn't, at least I didn't.
Right, there was discussion
It was
of talking
pretty
about different
recent.
options, but I don't think the dollars, all the dollars and cents was there.
So in option 2,
Unfortunately.
the gold tickets for the dropping off 2 loads, that's gone, right?
That would be gone.
Correct.
Unless we can figure out a way to
Because
pay
the
for it.
funding is not there to do the
Okay.
special
Well, maybe we
pickup
can work
and,
something out in
unless you have an
DPW.
option to pay
The
for
point is, I
service.
guess if we have a
Yeah.
pickup at the house, then our elderly individuals won't have to worry about trying to get what they need to dispose of at their home to the dump, right? The idea is the convenience for the citizen to be able to just place the items on their curbside on a particular date that they set up.
And this is so anybody can pick a date, just randomly, they come out whenever,
I think
or?
they would, I not,
I don't know
have
if
the
it's
deal.
a
I'm not
grant.
sure they would have to call and arrange so that Advance would have a little schedule, like I'm coming on, next week
So-
on Thursday, and I got these many people on the route I gotta pick up. So it's not a predefined, you probably have to call for this service and line this all up.
Okay, that's what I was checking
Yeah.
too. So throughout the year, or is it gonna be limited to like a 2-week time frame? So,
Mary Jo, I could have a, sure.
So at the request of the Board of Public Works, and the council as a whole, our contract was up with Advanced Disposal as of April 2019. We extended it. It'll be up for sure in April of 2020. Board of Public Works came up with a bunch of options. We looked at all those options. Those are included in the contract. We have not gone back to the Board of Public Works, because typically the Board of Public Works has always wanted some recommendation as financial. The Board of Public Works can come up with recommendations, but if we can't financially make it work, we would have to go back. So what the contract is, it's for 5 years. So Alderman Hollenbeck is right. If we have this special pickup included in the price, it would be for 5 years. We'd be locked in. There would be, if you had the special pickup, and 7 cubic yards is very, very large. It's a lot more than they can take to the drop-off site with their 2 golden tickets right now. And that would be called in by the resident to the Public Works Department. We haven't worked out all the deals with, or haven't worked out all the things with Advanced Disposal, if they're gonna pick everything up on Thursday, because they get through the city early on Thursday, or if they're gonna pick everything up on Friday. But the people would be given a day to put it out, maybe Thursday, Friday. Advanced will come in and pick up those individuals who have registered to have a special pickup through the Department of Public Works. The reason why we wanted to go through the Department of Public Works is because there's many people who put stuff out on the curb right now that we tag, and we abate. So we don't want to abate somebody who called in a special pickup. And then, yes, it will go to the Board of Public Works, the last, and I'm gonna work this out with Alderman Johnson, it'll go to the Board of Public Works in 2 weeks. at
You're
the
gonna work it
end
out
of the
with
month.
the whole committee, I hope.
The whole committee,
Yeah,
but I'm
thanks.
saying I'm working it out on the agenda to discuss this.
Oh, I would be the chair of that committee though, so.
Oh,
Talk to
you're
the
the-
mayor, he appoints the chairs.
Oh, I didn't, I thought you were the chair. Okay, I'll work it out with you then, for the
I think,
agenda items.
I think I am the chair now.
yeah, Mike, because Scott Mulqueen was the chair, so Mike takes over the position as a chair.
It's not the attorneys, I don't wanna distract from this.
It's a different
Whatever,
topic.
We'll-
Right.
whenever you get it worked
Yeah,
out,
we'll
let me
figure-
know,
we'll
and I'll
figure it
work
out.
out the agenda with whoever. But that's essentially how, it would work out. It's fundable through the current budget. We would not have any, special, or we would not have any, refuse that would be disposed of at the drop-off. The drop-off would be open, and the budget basically looks at the same hours, in it, same days and hours that it would be open from April basically to, December for yard waste and the recyclables, which is white goods, oil, yard waste, and, ground, things of that nature, things that we can, recycle. Currently, we have the e-waste. We have to see if that program's still gonna be available, next year. So, any questions?
So this is one special pickup per year by the property owner.
By the property owner. The property owner calls it in.
Okay.
Mhm. Correct. Not, well, if the renter, if it's open to the people that have the ability to call in a special pickup are those that are currently getting garbage and recycling service. So if a renter gets garbage and recycling service, then they could call in a special pickup. Anything else?
How are you keeping track? Do you have a list or a
We would
database?
have yeah, just like we keep track of the passes right now, we have a database, and that database is our cart database, and so we would register, they would register on that cart database, for that special pickup.
Just to confirm, they can call, they don't have to physically come in and, like, we physically come in and pick up the tickets right now, we would just be able to call for the special pickup.
Correct.
That was
And the drop-off for the yard waste, would we still be doing tickets, or is it just, no?
No, it would be open, the yard waste right now, we can fund, through the recycling. So, and yard waste hasn't been a huge, right now, economically, we take it to a farmer who changes it into mulch. So it hasn't been a real issue. If we have to start taking it to waste management to dispose of, that might be another story, but right now we're fine. So really, that would be open to anyone that would have a Cudahy driver's license or Cudahy ID to drop it off.
How long, oh, go ahead. How long have you been working on these plans for, Mary Jo?
10 years.
I'm just asking this particular, I know
This
negotiations
particular one?
started.
Yeah,
lo-
actually, they started a year ago, with the previous Board of Public Works and the extension of the contract. The board at that time, it was not favorable at that time because there was we were only talking with Advanced Disposal because it was part of their extension. So they wanted to really limit the amount that the people could put on the curb and stuff like that. So it started about a year ago at this time, and right now, we included it in a competitive bid. We did have 3 contractors bid on it, and Advanced ended up being the low bid on that. But all of them knew what they were bidding, and we specifically said 7 cubic yards. That's what it was gonna be. We had one at 22 cubic yards. We had it twice a year. 22 cubic yards, we didn't get any bids on. They just flat out said no. We did get 2 special pickups a year, but that would add about $30,000 to $40,000 onto our budget, which I can't sustain in my budget,
Okay,
right?
My question was, you had said that anyone with a Cudahy address could then do the drop off, so that would open that up to renters who currently can't do that, right? Cause they need to,
Sure,
the
if they're-
owner might have to come.
Right,
with a
so
ticket.
if they're working on their yard, if they're working on the yard as part of the rent, and they have to take a load of yard waste in, yes, as long as their ID showed that they were a Cudahy resident, yes, they could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So how do you wanna go, you wanna go through, or does the council have general questions for the department heads? I mean, most of the changes were just in wages, adjusting wages, contracts, they had to decrease some of their line items because they had to go to wages, salaries, and benefits. Again, there wasn't much room in the budget. I mean, when you have limits, it's actually easy, because you really can't do much.
how do you
Can
guys-
I suggest we go line by line like we have in years
Okay.
past, because I think that it's important to know just
Okay.
if there's cuts, where those are.
Okay.
In addition to going line by line, I'd be interested in going through in more detail the capital borrow.
That's item 3.
Gotcha. I'll wait till item 3.
Okay, so why don't we, the revenues, are there any revenues that, and when you look at it, you have questions on, that we tried to do a 3-year average on the right, just so people had a sense of why we budgeted the revenue numbers like we did. The revenue side's kind of the easy side. The licenses, the permits were all kind of realigned with 3-year averages. Or if we knew that we had an increase that was in the middle of the year, we projected up for 2020 a little bit.
So I'm just looking at court fines just being one of the ones that sees the greatest reduction. Recommended at 220, 334, was last year's recommendation. Now, I see that it is low this year, however, I'm under the understanding that a few of the police officers were out this year, and a 3-year average is right around 300,000. Now, I wanna make sure that we come in as accurate as possible. I just fear that if we drop too far down in our revenues, we won't be able to make that back up in expenses for years to come. Does that make sense? Because we'll be restricted by expenditure restraint.
Yeah, that's on the levy.
It does make sense. If you look at the 2018 budget under the court fines, that was overstated at 407,000.
Sure.
The actual revenue was 275,000 that year.
And that's why I'm saying not necessarily go wild with it, but if we went up to 250, that would provide some more flexibility within the budget and still a realistic number that they could potentially hit. On the 3-year average, it's 300,000.
We do have to tread carefully with that, because if the trend for this year continues, they're budgeted to bring in $334,000 in revenue. And if it stays status quo for the next 4 months, as it did through July, they'd only bring in $202,000. That's gonna be quite a shortfall.
Sure, but again, that's with several officers out this year. They'll be at full staff next year, which would reflect a
And
far
like the
different
mayor
number.
said, we're trying to be conservative with it. Our expenses are still there. So finding that revenue is always easy to do. The expenses are, I mean, that's just simple. We
Yeah.
are nowhere near our expenditure restraint. So we have some room there, and we will next year. That's not something that we would have to worry about, but grossly overstating that revenue is a danger.
Sure, but I think realistically, there is some padding there without being excessive with it.
It's
Because I
entirely
agree that
possible.
the previous mayor obviously did inflate those numbers dramatically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, my philosophy is to try to make them as accurate as possible to give you a true sense. What I didn't wanna do is project a high number and then come to you in the middle of the year and going, oh, guess what, the expenses are exceeding the rate of our revenues. What do you wanna do now? I don't think that's a good position to be in either. So I'd rather be optimistic that the revenues go up. I think we can come back mid-year and adjust. I mean, that would be a good story to say the revenues are up. And if budgets have to be, we have to manipulate, or not manipulate's the wrong word, adjust some of the budgets, then we need to. But we met before the meeting, we felt that it was better to kind of be a little more conservative and not overstate the revenues and live within the expenses.
And looking at it, they're projecting, 200,000 and they've got 220, so you've got 9.8%, cushion there.
True, but the 3-year average is 300,000,
I understand.
so we're knocking that down 80,000 below the 3-year average, just because you have one anomaly.
Well, it's been trending down, since 2018 was 275. And then this year will be down below that also.
So part of what I needed to do being new here was to I gotta trust that, they see the trends that I haven't had the opportunity to see. So, they've been helpful in guiding to make sure we don't overstate them in the future. So I think they were on the right track by not overestimating the revenues.
And I agree with the mayor. I would rather be in a position where, you know, we've got to come back and say that we're increased versus having to scramble because we over projected.
Transfer
That makes
funds.
perfect sense to me. We just have to make sure that with the expenditure restraint, we have a consistent understanding of right now, because we used to do quarterly updates of where all the revenue is and expenses are at. I don't think we've done that at all this year.
Well, part of that is one of the, I mentioned in one of the statement is, we could really use a finance person, and unfortunately, we don't have that, so Kelly is saddled with doing her job, training new people, and then, trying to figure out how to close out the month, so we are aware of that. We haven't been able to, people-wise, have the staff to do that as timely as we need to, so, she works on the weekends to get those done for us, and, we're trying to delegate and reallocate and get the new people up to speed in the clerk's office, so, maybe we'll get that a little quicker, but it's,
I understand
she's doing kind of two jobs, and.
Thank you.
yes, and obviously, we understand that, and we
Right.
certainly
So
appreciate it.
we have
but-
money in the, like I said, we have other monies that we're optimistic that we won't spend it all, so we have an option, as Alderman Hollenbeck said, to reallocate this money that we don't think we're gonna spend, but I can't sit here and tell you that I won't spend it, but our gut tells us we won't spend it, and that we have it available, these other funds to transfer to departments that have needs.
Yeah, again, and I certainly understand that, but remember, when we bumped up against the expenditure restraint with the fire department, no one transferred funds to them, and they had to roll without any additional overtime for the rest of the year. So I think that we all need to be cognizant of that ordinance, that some of these departments may run up against that, and we need to know, we have them.
The limit in your means?
Yes.
That's separate from expenditure restraint.
I understand that, but I'm just saying that if we were to hit these departments who eventually, because of revenues down, because of everything else, are seeing a reduction in their budget, that if they run up against that, that we as a council need to know exactly what's available for money, and we have to have a much different consideration than we had in the past as far as moving money back and forth, because the only time that it's come up, we didn't do it.
So, I mean, not to interrupt, but I'm a little confused, because kind of what you're saying is we should raise revenue so it looks better, so that.
No,
we
that's
don't
not what I'm
have to have
saying.
an
That's
expenditure.
n-
And I'm just gonna then ask a question, I guess, Kelly and to Kelly and the mayor, off the point of not getting quarterly updates, Alderman Morales, are you, and we do have the live within your means, are you monitoring still for that ordinance at all?
I've never monitored the live within your means.
As far as-
Mayor Hohenfeld always took care of monitoring the live within your means. So no, it hasn't been being monitored since his departure.
Okay. Do we
I-
plan to try to initiate at least that part of it? I mean, I understand we don't have a full financial.
Sure, part of the challenge is getting, updated numbers, and, certain departments, their revenues come in at different times, so, I'm kinda relying on this team to tell me, are we on track, are we off track? Because, is it our revenues a steady stream, it's always the same amount, or like in property taxes, we see revenues and then we see a spike in the middle of the year because people pay their second or third, final payments. So, I guess that's the ordinance that would, be my role to monitor that. So, and then we had talked about that before in the meeting, is how do we keep up to speed on these, so we know that we're off course or we're on course? Or, as a collective department heads, how can we collectively shift left or right to kind of fill a void if needed? So,
And that, again, is where I was going with this. This live within your means provision in our ordinance puts a bunch of restraints on the flowing back and forth of money. And we need to be cognizant of the fact that we very may well run over in some other areas. And if we do, we have to move that money around, unlike what we did last time when the fire department did not get their money.
We did discuss that at the department head meeting today when we were all talking about this. There is a live within your means, and, at some point, we will be caught up to the point of watching that. Right now, I'm watching just the revenues versus expenses as a whole, rather than the live within your means, and we're close. But the specific accounts that are listed within the live within your means, I'm not monitoring at this time. I don't have time to monitor that. If we have an issue where the departments know which accounts they have that are affected by live within your means, and we have availability in some of the other, expense line items that we aren't able to cut out of the 101 for future use for next year, where we would be able to do a budget transfer, and that would be brought to finance.
Do not confuse the fact that we're not getting them now, and which is the 2019 budget, and this is the 2020 budget.
Sure, that's what I'm
So
saying.
I'm just, just keep in mind that, while it slightly relates to it, what we're talking about not getting them now relates to the budget that we already have.
Of course, but I'm looking at next November or next December, if one of these department has an issue with FMLA or whatever the case may be, and we need to move money around, we are flexible in the understanding that we are making the decision this year so that next year when it comes around, we don't leave these department heads stranded and not having access to funds because it's sitting in other buckets or pockets instead of fully funded.
I think at any time, this council has the opportunity to adapt, change.
And
whatever.
that's the way I think it
So-
should be. However, the only time that we had that, the council did not do that. So that's why I'm saying right now, if we're underfunding with the expectation that we'll just move money around, that's how I think that it should work. But it didn't last time, so I want to make perfectly clear that that's what we're
Well,
doing.
So-
I can only live up to whatever the ordinance is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't.
And I'll clarify that. At the time, the council determined that it didn't raise to the level of using the contingency. It didn't, the definition of contingency and the definition of emergency, it didn't raise to there. While Eller said that we could do it, didn't necessarily mean we should do it.
There was also a lot of other areas of which that we had excess funding that we could have, not just in contingency, but in other various pockets. I mean, we finished the year with the several $100,000 surplus, so.
And it was almost the month of December that we had to go. And we don't know, at that point, you're right, we didn't know what the DPW would come in at. So you can't necessarily make the assumption early on in December 1st on what you're going to use for someone else. So, which is why you take them as they come up, and we did take it as it. And I know it was 4-1, and I know you objected to it, but I just want to add, what was the thought process.
Okay, but we don't have to re-debate that, and we can certainly look back at it another time. I just think that we have to be perfectly clear here, is that if you flip through this, you'll see multiple drops in areas that it's gonna be very tough to sustain. And if we don't recognize now that we're gonna have to perhaps shift some money around, these departments could be left holding the bag next year. And I wanna be on perfect record to say that we should move money around. We should be conservative in our, revenue projections. We just need to have the flexibility that we haven't had because of this ordinance.
I guess I don't want to negate the ordinance. It's not a bad thing to have in place to remind everyone to be mindful, a little bit more mindful. Puts a little bit something in writing in our ordinances to our people, as we all are here and here for the stakeholders, our citizens of this community. And in turn, when that time comes that a discussion needs to be taking place, I think that, as Alderman Hollenbach said, the one time we assessed that specific situation, the timing of it, where we're at, and there's a lot of components. It's not just a clear-cut answer. So I believe that this council would make the best decision on behalf of our citizens at the time, keeping mindful of this back-end foundation of this.
Keep in mind that we also changed the ordinance several months later to prohibit FMLA from triggering. So if you want to look back and you want to be technical about it, it was right all along because we changed the ordinance to reflect that FMLA shouldn't impact the budget.
And again, that's all part of our, fluid, budgets are fluid, ordinances can be fluid because times, things, situations change. So we are here because I believe that we can assess situations and make these decisions when the time comes. But however, with that said, is when we are talking about today, a budget for 2020, I also agree that I like to have budget numbers that are put into place that are more realistic than inflated, no matter if it's an expense or a revenue.
No one's arguing that.
And I think we're all in favor that, if something comes up, we will take it up.
Okay. But again, I think it's important that we also, I know Kelly's busy, but we gotta make a real conscious effort to watch that, because we as the body aren't here, we're not watching the numbers, we don't know where they're at. So we can't let that potentially slip.
So to that
Well, we can
point,
request for an update.
we did put some more money in the consulting for our consultant to help us out, to help her out, to assist. So we'll look at that, and we did that intentionally to make sure she gets the help she needs to get something like this
Yeah,
done.
and the chair, I believe, would be open to having a discussion to try to make some arrangement as far as like periodically getting an update on that as well,
Yeah.
with an agenda item.
All right, we got past almost page 1, so.
I just have a quick question about the $5 increase in parking permits. What is the cost right now? Like how much of a percentage increase?
$25 for 2 months, so it would go to $30 for 2 months. Basically,
And that's-
$2.50 a month.
We're saying that's pretty reasonable compared to other cities around here.
It's comparable, yeah.
Small cities, not just city.
No, there was, I think, 6 municipalities in the poll that the police department did.
Okay, thank you.
So other revenues, you have questions on, concerns? Any other questions on revenue?
Nope.
Go to expenses?
Yep.
Common council. Pretty much static, pretty much.
The only change is the stipend, which was done away with.
Yeah. Mayor's budget, there was an allocation problem with Kelly's numbers last year, we just corrected them so that she was allocated against the mayor's budget. Some of her salary and benefits hit the mayor's budget, so that was just a correction. Some of the civil service, some of these smaller boards and commissions we looked at, and if they really hadn't spent any money, we just zero them out. Stuff like that. So all the way through other boards and commissions, pretty light. So just tell me what any of the boards or commissions you'd like to look at.
I think it's just notable that the Fourth of July parade is an extra $5,000, so I think that's a positive, even though it's a increase over what most of the other.
Yeah, and then we added 1,000 to the National Night Out, too. I mean, when you go to courts, then they're pretty much status quo on the courts, just pay increases for the clerk. I think there's a clerk and a part-time position. So,
What's the
so-
increase in the software maintenance for the court?
They have they have software for their tips, yeah, they gotta, update their system, their tips. And they do, state, this new
Oh, I'm sorry, I was asking
SDC.
related to the software updates that are needed all around for when we're buying the new computers. Is that
Oh,
related?
that's,
Or is it totally different?
that's kinda, I would say
Specific
citywide,
software.
yeah,
Very good.
specific, right. If you get to elections, that will increase because of the
Presidential.
presidential and the primaries, so we did have to increase, by law, we had to increase that budget. So that budget fluctuates a bit depending on
Right.
what's happening as
Every
far as
year.
national elections.
Year.
Yeah. Director of Office Services, you wanna speak to your own budget?
Sure. I don't, it's not much of a change, other than the salaries and WRS and, health insurance. My health insurance did go down because I do have the 2 part-timers now who don't have any benefits. This does have me reduce their hours slightly, so I'll have to make an adjusted schedule for summer with them where they are down to, 3 days a week rather than 4. I think we can make it work. It'll be after tax season, however, they can pick up hours in the election budget because they will have to help with that, so.
Clerk treasurer, pretty straightforward. Salaries, wages, pretty much. It's, yeah. But I think it's up because we do an allocation. or-
We needed to
To-
properly
post,
postage,
Yeah, we
needed
were
to be
down.
properly funded, that's how we mail the tax bills.
yeah, we were always over budget.
Contractual services or something.
Assessor, that's outsourced to the assessor company.
Contract this year was reduced to 53,500 from 70 because we are done with the reval process, so that's it.
Information services, we kept the salary in there, because we don't know what we're doing moving forward. I did reduce, equipment replacement, new equipment, maintenance, because the plan is, when we get to the next item on the agenda, to upgrade this equipment, so we don't need to do maintenance, and that will be a big deal for us. So there's some opportunity there if need be. And even with the contractual services with Taylor, I think if we're on newer equipment, you might see that budget be reduced because you won't need as much help desk. Controller finance. Now this one has This one, we increased the contractual services. I think this speaks to Alderman Morales. I'm trying to get these monthly closings done timely, is to have Dave help Kelly out in certain instances to help with some of the systems. We're trying to automate some stuff within payroll. So we're looking at other ways to be more productive. Intergovernmental services, I'll let you speak to that one. It's just a bunch of.
There wasn't a lot of change here. The thing that we did update was other supplies and expenses, because we do run the newsletter through there. So that wasn't properly funded, and it was just being run over budget. So that's been updated to reflect the actual expenses that go through there.
Credit and collections, $4,000. Those are write-offs. City attorney, what you'll see is we took away the salary and wages based on our change in how we appoint or hire a city attorney. We moved all that, all the salary and wages to contractual services. So far, he's running, the current city attorney is running probably below the expenses of our elected city attorney at this point.
Where are we at on the RFP process? Because
I need to gather some information from municipalities on where to send the RFP to, otherwise it was prepared and ready to go out,
so did we just automatically extend Chris then?
Yeah, I think part of it is we had to keep him as a court until we got the
I get,
legal.
yeah, but I get that, but I just remember we voting on having an RFP in by August. It's October now.
I don't think legally we could send it, we couldn't send
We
it
had
to.
to wait until after the 60-day period for signatures, which was the 28th, that gave 2 days, and we may not have every second accounted for, even on my weekends, so as much as I wanna be able to get everything done in one day, it just doesn't work that way. So the RFP is ready, it's been ready, but I have to get recommendations from municipalities on where to send that. And
So we
then
can, maybe that's something we can look at for next.
Once budget's passed, that can go out.
Yeah, we're still having to, we still need to recruit someone for our inspection department, and even that, just because we're doing budgets and we're behind. Professional fees, we basically left the same, or increased, other legal costs, 5,000 to 118,000. City Hall grounds and wages increase, probably be due to wages increase is the same.
There's changes in property liability insurance. This is where our civic insurance is paid through, where we have workers' comp, auto, physical liability. Those are being offset properly. Last year, we partially corrected an issue that we had where we were recognizing the revenue from the dividend and expensing the full expense of the premium. After talking with Tim Swinski, one of the auditors last year, he recommended that that dividend is put into the 102 fund, which is outside the 101. And the expense for the difference between the dividend and the premium is the only portion that runs through the 101, because that's our actual expense. So that was done on workers' comp last year. I also went and fixed that with the liability insurance for building and auto physical, so that we would see those expenses more aligned with what we actually expend out of the 101.
Okay. Employee welfare, that's where we budget the 90,000 for people that retire, and we have to do payouts and pay their vacation and anything else. Contingency was basically what we had remaining that went into the contingency fund, so that's down quite a bit. CDA department, that's not in the 101 anymore. The police department. Wages up, salaries. Overtime, we budgeted down. We took, what else? We added some equipment, some radios in here.
So overtime drops from 150 to 88,000. Is that going to be, I suppose we'll have the department heads come up and talk, but I mean, that's a huge downward jump.
They also have grant overtime of 50,000.
Isn't that down from last year?
No, last year was 50,000. At the last finance meeting for the budget last year, $9,079 of the grant overtime was transferred to the health department. So that is the exact same as last year's budget.
Oh, the 15 would only take it up to 97.
I'm sorry, Kate.
You said 50 or 15? For
The grant overtime is 50.
Oh, 50, okay, okay. I thought you said 15.
Okay. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Any questions on this?
Hang on one second, Mayor. Can you clarify what the PD fund expenses was again?
Which one?
Second page, that would be PD fund expenses, 101, 5211.
That's an actual, I don't know what they've had run through there. That's not a budgeted amount, that's an actual expense.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 3-year average of 44,000.
Looks like it was removed in
18.
2018, possibly, I can only see 18 and 19
Yeah.
for budget amounts. So I'm not sure what that account was, I'd have to look at all that detail. It had no,
Budget for this year. There was no budget placed by the police department in that budget.
On the vehicle maintenance, in the first page is from 28 to 18, but the 3-year average is 30. I mean,
well,
Is that
and
because we're getting new
that'll
vehicles,
Sort
or-
of be addressed in 3, I'll discuss.
Okay.
I'll discuss some of that.
okay.
Same thing with gas and oil too, I mean, that's down slightly from the average, but however, a lot from where we were.
Well, those are budgeted amounts that you're seeing, you can only see the actual under for 2019 for a 7-month,
Mhm.
so.
Anything else on the police? Emergency dispatch, pretty much the same as last year for one. Not fire station buildings and grounds, nothing budgeted, and then the fire department. Again, that's really through the combination of the 701 fund and the 101 fund for the fire department, we made some adjustments and moved some monies around.
Again, that's another $30,000 decrease in overtime, and I'd like to hear from both the chiefs at the end of this, along with the other department
Okay.
heads. Just, It's a lot of money for both of
Yeah.
those.
Inspection department, that one's down because of the allocations to the 110 that we were able to allocate to that other fund that pretty much pays for itself. Engineering department. Same as last year, the total budget. Machinery and equipment, it's actually down. City garage and grounds, slightly up, a few $100. Public works supervision, up slightly. And we have retiree health in there too, that increase. Concrete streets, these are the budgets, they kinda get, over the years, she has some flexibility and depending on what projects, if it's concrete or alleys or whatever, so. Asphalt streets, about down slightly, 1,000. Snow and ice removal, down 10 grand. Alleys down about 2,000 or $3,000. Salaries and wages. Street name guides, down about 6,000 overall. Traffic signals arterial. That's down about $1,000. Street lighting, We Energy, we must be one of their favorite customers. Electrical.
Talked last year about, trying to work with the energies to buy back some players, so that this price wasn't so high.
Yeah, Mary Jo and Scott, we have to buy the poles, replace them. You can have We Energies still rent their poles and upgrade them, but it requires an outlay of money by us to pay them to upgrade them to LEDs, and then they still rent us the pole. So our strategy is to buy our own pole and then live with that. So maybe that's something we need to talk about, because that's a, electricity's that's never gonna go away unless we address that head on,
Yeah,
So
cause
we have to
remember
get
it was
that-
an issue last year, like the energies wouldn't put the more efficient bulbs in.
No, not unless you
So,
pay.
Yeah.
Why would they cut their revenue?
Yeah.
Yes, that was an item I had brought up previously about possibly in the future doing a capital borrow for and trying to do part of the city and,
Yeah.
It's the largest expense on, one of the largest line items in
Yeah.
the entire budget.
It's probably the biggest one you have control over, you know you're gonna get a reduction there, but you gotta, it's gonna
Is
be over
this the
time.
kind of thing that we could put in this capital request that's item number 3, or is this different?
This is a short-term borrow that we're gonna
These are
rent.
long-term, so that wouldn't.
Yeah, you're probably gonna buy more poles. I mean, it really depends on the, are we doing them, you're contracting out, you probably, depending on what you're not gonna have our one electrician replace all the poles, we might be here for a while, right? So you'd probably have to bring someone to help do that. We do them, I think, one by one right now, as we can.
Okay.
We've done the downtown. Parks and trees, we're at about 360, salaries and wages. Trees and shrubs, 16,000. Weed control, about the same. Garbage and refuse collection, down 19. Garbage refuse disposal, 506, up slightly. And wages, and then the contract services increased. Health department, we had some increases in slightly with the WRS. And I think we corrected a budget from last year that wasn't correctly put into the system. That additional $10,000 was added to our budget but not reflected in the budget number that was in the system. And then there's environmental EHS, that's for the health inspector that we share with South Milwaukee. Animal control, that's all Maddox. They just give us a bill, it went up slightly. So, which, department head would you like?
Can we just hear from each one of them on their
Sure.
budget? So,
Yeah, so if,
Katie, if you want to come up maybe, or?
Yep.
sure, yeah, well, just tell us, about the budget, your budget, and how you feel about it, and concerns. What do you mean we're running out of time?
Yeah, it's 6:30 on here.
You can always start a meet late, you
Okay.
can't start one
All
early.
right, so I'll just start and cancel.
And common council meeting can't happen until this finishes, so,
Good evening.
sir.
I have met with the mayor and the department managers, and I think it's safe to say that I have some concerns about the budget. We know that some of the line items are underfunded. The revenues have been adjusted downward, and deep down, I wish they weren't down as far as they are, because I think it may present challenges to recover from that budget-wise. I do understand the logic behind it. I'd like to say that I respect the mayor's efforts in balancing the budget. Even though I have concerns, the mayor has assured me that we'd be looking at this throughout the year and would collaboratively come back to the council and request additional funding for items that are over budget, mid-year or beyond. As long as the council's willing to take a look at that and look at other funding sources, whether we're able to get up to full staff and actually get back on track with the revenues after we get our final officer out of the academy in December. Look at other line items that may be slightly overfunded right now, where the mayor anticipates there may be funding available. As long as those options are available, I'm on board 100%, and the mayor has been really open about where he's going with this and the challenges that we're all facing, and I want to be part of the team.
I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you for this opportunity. I won't be as articulate as the police chief was, but I'll do my best. The mayor's emphasized that this is all the money there is, and we need to live within it. And with that in mind, we set up our budgets. First thing that I did was set up what is not negotiable, like contractual salaries and whatnot, health insurance and retiree health insurance. And after that was all plugged in, didn't leave a lot, but we did the best we could. And you did mention overtime. This year, just a little history, when the overtime came up almost 2 years ago, we dropped down to a 5-person minimum staffing. We maintained that for a significant amount during 2018. This year was 60,000. We were able to keep it, to balance it. We should come in right on target this year for 2019. It does show a decrease for next year, but that hinges upon joining something called shared services. Shared services is a term that's used in the fire service a lot. It means a lot of different things. But this particular shared service is a much broader, much more definitive shared service with other fire departments in the area, where we cover each other more seamlessly than in the past. Elsewhere in the budget, the mayor has also covered some software needs and some other equipment needs that will put us in a position to utilize that shared services and take part in that. So we will monitor that throughout the year, and I think we'll be in fairly good shape. We'll do the best we can. The other thing we need to keep in mind is we have a fire station that needs a roof before winter, or some part of a roof. That's gonna be this year yet sometime. And then the other thing that this entire budget hinges on is planning for the future in some sort of a consolidation, either consolidation into one fire station, one of the current fire stations, or building a new fire station somewhere in the middle or somewhere in a good location. And that study will come to you soon as well. And so for the long term, I think we'll be okay getting through with this budget, and in the long run, we'll need to make those other considerations down the road. Any specific questions?
I don't have any.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So for preparing the health department budget, I looked at adherence to statutory requirement, impact to residents, safety, services provided, and the ability to meet fiduciary obligations. I was able to put that budget together to meet the objective before the mayor. And as everybody has echoed, the budgets are slim. I think this is the first budget in my 5 years here that we've come together and are willing to work collectively as a group of department heads to deliver the budget to you all. So everybody's making sacrifices, and it just kind of is what it is this year.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
I did not put anything in their water, just.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize, I just happened to see our street name guides, that for some reason that's all, that whole line, the line items are goofed up.
Oh, yeah, that was me, copying and pasting.
So, I should have checked it a little closer, but these things were,
Fluid, these were.
they were
fine.
very fluid. So, we might have a few issues there, but I'll double check it. I was just trying to calculate before I got it up here. Essentially, my budget, the mayor requested a zero. I prepared a zero budget. We did have increases in the curbside collection, because obviously we went out for bid. That increased about $14,000, so I had to make up that $14,000. I did shift some labor over. I have a full-time employee who does mainly water, so her salary and her health insurance went to water utility, so we saved on that. We also had a couple of new positions that we filled this year. Obviously, those individuals are starting at a lower rate, so we adjusted for that. So essentially, I was able to tweak some things and get it at a zero. So there's really no services that are going to be impacted at all by this budget. Any questions?
Thank you, ma'am.
Director of Office Services budget went up just slightly. It doesn't reflect the full increase for the wages, but that was absorbed a lot with the health insurance, as I addressed earlier. That went down. That includes a 2% increase for my staff. Well deserved this last year and a half. They've really been putting forth a lot of extra effort. Budget is what it is. I cut where I had to cut in other line items so that we could come in as close to a zero as we room in my budget to give. Sacrificed over $12,000 last year, so that really put me at my bare minimum. So I'm literally at bare bones on what we can give, so you will see a slight increase in my budget. I did present the mayor with his requested 0% and 2% decrease. That meant cutting the part-time staff's hours to a point that is just not feasible for the office to run. So it is an option if necessary going forward for next year. It is something that we can look at. It is just not as feasible to not have that many staffers on hand when taking in $16 million in taxes. We will need the manpower, especially with board elections next year, so. We won't have any reduced services. There's nothing to work with this year. It is, like everyone has said, it is what it is.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So, Mayor, on a whole, how do you feel about the budget, your budget?
Well, I really wasn't left with many options with the tax levy and the revenue, so it's really constrained, but it's really the only thing we can do. I know some people may be upset with the 2% increases, but we've been really struggling to find people. I mean, the economy's going, and finding people is really difficult. In some cases, you see that it takes us a while to fill some of our positions. We're competing with other municipalities. In many cases, we pay lower, so we had to adjust our pay to get some new people. So we've been lucky. I think, as Kelly said, some people that were on retiree health fell off our plans. That helped some of the departments. Again, if this was hard, next year's going to be even more difficult. I can't wait till 2022. I just hope this council be real careful about TIDs and ETIDs moving forward, because I don't think we can afford to take money off the tax roll and it will just hurt our services. Because if we do another TID or ETID, that just takes money right off the board, and we'll be looking for bigger expense cuts.
Yeah, but that's a
Yeah.
little misnomer, because the TID did extremely well.
Yeah, it did, but
In-
what I
in-
don't want, but if you take that same property and then sweep it and put it under another TID, now you've just taken that revenue that we're expecting right off the rolls, and now it's gonna go to support a new TID. And therefore, we won't have the money, the revenue will go to support the tax incremental financing district. So we have to be careful moving forward that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, I completely understand that, TIF doesn't stand for taxes is free. That,
Right.
you pay the piper one way or another. The only thing is, I know it was talked about at the CDA that, if we were looking at a new TID, it would be somewhere else in the city that could use it. So, while we gain it back in one area, to benefit and help us out in another area, it can definitely offset. And I think, looking back at its 21 years, it did extremely well.
Yes, I'm not saying it didn't, and I think it's done extremely well, but the departments have struggled because we could not include that revenue and increase our tax levy, and we don't have that taxes coming into our coffers. They're going into everyone else's, or they're not going into anyone's right now except to pay down the debt on the TID. So I'm looking forward, because I think it's a sign of relief that we can maybe do some things like streetlights and investment that pay back some long-term things.
This budget was very reminiscent of the 2018 when we were at 0.9. So,
Mayor, I just have to ask, being that the dump is such a big issue again, what do you tell the people that we're expecting an open dump and spring cleanup and all?
See, the dump the drop-off site is open. I think I gave them a better alternative. A pickup, I had more people complain about they couldn't get to the drop-off site. I think, again, if the Board of Public Works wants to look at a pay for drop-off fee, and they can make it wash, then I would support that. You know, I put money in the budget if we choose to open in a Saturday and when we're normally closed, just so people can get rid of their recyclables. I think that could be a benefit. So I can explain it. I'm not.
Yeah, and well, I happen to agree with you. I think they've been working and negotiating on this for a year, so I'm happy that you
I
picked this
think
one.
This is a good alternative. I think it may, you know, I kinda like it, so not here complaining.
You know,
You're always gonna get the good and the bad. I mean, there's the good, there's bad. We'll figure it out collectively, you know, one step at a time. Sometimes you can't do everything in one, full swoop.
being on the Board of Public Works when we decided to pass on it, it's good to hear that, a lot of the restrictions that were in play back then that made it not palatable for the community are gone. So that's a definite plus. And I totally agree with you, Mayor, that, opening up the, dump, it would have to be cost neutral. It just has to be.
No.
Johnson said,
We'll work on it.
it's gotta be that way. If not, there is no conversation, so. And I wanna thank the department heads. I mean, it was kinda interesting getting in the room and, I don't wanna say we battled, we openly discussed alternatives. And took it, which was good, what was bad. And I think if this council's open to, hey, if we run into a tough situation in any department, that we'll all pull together and do the right thing,
So I'm gonna ask, because we are butting up against some time, the Plan Commission meeting is at 7?
7.
Okay, so who's on? Okay,
I am as well.
so do we want to, because I do believe that item 3 will take us a little bit. Do we want to recess, which would be my thing,
I think there's only one item on the plan commission,
and allow
right?
you guys to go to Plan
Yeah,
Commission and
so
then
we
come
can
back?
recess and then, yeah, it'll be fast.
Okay, so I'd be looking for a motion to recess.
That's fine.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made,
That was
seconded.
fine.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. We are in recess right now at 6:53.